Sometimes the pain people carry in their hearts doesn't show in their faces. Especially among older adults, depression doesn't always look like sadness. It can hide behind polite smiles, quiet routines, and words like, "I'm just tired," or "it's nothing really." But inside, there may be a heavy weight that's hard to describe, much less to talk about. If you're listening to this or watching this video, I want to invite you to pause and really take this moment for yourself, or for someone you love. Because what we're going to talk about could truly change someone's life. Depression in later life is more common than we think, and yet it's also one of the most misunderstood and overlooked health issues among seniors. And the signs, they're often subtle, easy to brush off, easy to miss. But here's the truth. Behind those subtle signs may lie a call for help. A call that often goes unanswered. So today, let's take a gentle but honest look into the 5 early signs of depression in older adults that are frequently ignored. Not because we don't care, but because we don't always know what to look for. Please stay with me until the end, because understanding these signs, truly understanding them, can be the first step to bringing back joy, purpose, and connection to someone's life. Let's begin. One of the earliest signs of depression in older adults is a quiet shift in their daily habits. Not something loud or dramatic, not something that screams for attention, but rather small changes that slowly build up over time. Maybe they start sleeping a little more during the day, saying they're just resting their eyes. Or perhaps they begin skipping meals, not because they don't have food, but because they just don't feel like eating. You might notice that they no longer enjoy their favourite morning walk, or they don't keep up with small routines they once loved, watering the plants, calling a friend, solving the crossword puzzle. These changes can appear so subtle, they often get chalked up to aging. "Oh, it's just part of getting older," people say. But here's what many don't realise. When someone begins to lose interest in the things that used to bring them joy, it may not be about age. It may be about a quiet sadness settling in. A sadness that drains energy, motivation, and even the desire to care for oneself. This is especially important for caregivers and family members to understand. Because if we think it's just aging, we risk missing the chance to help. We risk letting someone drift further into isolation without realizing that underneath it all they might be hurting. And for those who are going through it themselves, they may not even recognize that they're slipping into depression. They may just feel off, like something isn't quite right, but they can't explain it. So they stay silent, and that silence can grow. It's in these everyday changes, those quiet shifts in sleep, appetite, energy, and routine, that we find the early whispers of depression. And when we pay attention to those whispers, we give ourselves the opportunity to respond with compassion before the silence becomes too loud. Stay with me, because the next signs might surprise you even more. Sometimes the face of depression in older adults doesn't look like sadness at all. In fact, it often looks like nothing. No expression, no excitement, no laughter, no tears. It's easy to imagine depression as someone crying all the time or constantly talking about their pain. But for many seniors, depression shows up as a numbness, an emotional flatline. Their voice might sound dull, their smile fades, their reactions become minimal. It's not that they've stopped caring. It's that something inside has quietly shut down. You might notice they don't respond to good news like they used to. A visit from the grandkids, a funny story, a favourite movie. Things that once lit up their eyes now receive only a quiet nod or a vague, "that's nice." It's not ingratitude. It's not rudeness. It's emotional exhaustion. This emotional disappearance often goes unnoticed because it's mistaken for calmness or maturity. But inside, something much deeper may be happening. A sense of emptiness that's hard to put into words, a feeling that life has dulled, not just in colour, but in meaning. And for the person experiencing it, it can be incredibly isolating. Because how do you explain feeling nothing? How do you talk about a void that you can't even describe? Depression doesn't always cry out for help. Sometimes it hides in silence. Sometimes it wears a mask of composure. And unless we look closely, unless we truly see the person behind the quiet demeanor, we might miss the opportunity to ask the most powerful question. Are you okay? Because sometimes that one question opens a door to connection, to understanding, to healing. And in the next part, we'll talk about a sign that hits even deeper: the quiet withdrawal from relationships and why it matters more than we think. There's a moment, sometimes barely noticeable, when someone begins to slowly withdraw from the world around them, not in a loud way, not in a way that causes concern immediately, but gently, quietly, like a tide pulling back from the shore. Maybe they stop calling their old friends. Maybe they politely decline visits, saying they're just a little tired. Maybe they stop attending family gatherings, even if they used to love them. They become more comfortable being alone, not because solitude gives them peace, but because connection now feels too heavy, too distant, too exhausting. This retreat isn't about being introverted. It's not about needing rest or space. It's something else, something deeper, a soft resignation, a feeling that they no longer belong in the same way they once did. And it's so easy to overlook. We might think they're just slowing down, or they've always been a little quiet. But what if that quietness is a signal, a gentle cry for someone to notice? Human connection is a lifeline, especially in later years. It gives structure to our days, warmth to our hearts, and meaning to our moments. When someone begins to drift away from that, it's not always because they want to. It's often because they don't know how to stay. Or worse, because they feel like no one would notice if they left. And that belief that their presence no longer matters is one of the cruelest lies that depression tells. It's why we must keep reaching out, keep calling, keep inviting, even when they say no, even when they seem distant. Because deep down, most people don't want to be alone. They want to feel that someone still sees them, that someone still wants them around. And sometimes just knowing that you're missed is enough to bring someone back from that quiet place of retreat. In the next part, we'll explore a sign that's often overlooked because it hides behind physical symptoms, aches, pains, and health complaints that may have nothing to do with the body and everything to do with the heart. Imagine this: a senior constantly complaining of back pain, fatigue, stomach discomfort, or headaches. They've seen doctors, taken medication, run tests, but nothing ever quite explains it. It's just aging, they say. Or maybe I just need more rest. But what if those physical aches are actually emotional pain, disguised, redirected and silenced by a body that's trying to speak on behalf of a hurting heart? Depression in older adults often wears a mask. And that mask, it's physical illness. It's fatigue without a clear cause. It's chronic pain that refuses to leave. It's insomnia that lingers despite warm tea and soft pillows. It's the racing heart, the shallow breath, the tightness in the chest when there's no diagnosed condition to explain it. This is one of the most overlooked signs of depression, especially in older adults. Why? Because as we age, health issues become more common. Doctors and loved ones might focus on treating the body while the mind quietly suffers in the background. And for many older individuals, expressing emotional pain doesn't come easily. Perhaps they were raised in a time when vulnerability was discouraged, where talking about sadness or emptiness was seen as weakness. So instead of saying, "I feel lost," they say, "My back hurts." Instead of, "I feel hopeless," they say, "I'm just tired all the time." The body becomes the only way to cry out. But here's something powerful. When someone starts to feel seen, heard, and understood, some of those symptoms begin to fade. Not because the body has miraculously healed, but because the heart has finally been given a voice. It's why we must approach these complaints with both empathy and curiosity. Yes, support their physical health, but also gently ask how they've been feeling emotionally. Create space for the truth to surface, not just from the muscles or joints, but from the soul. Because sometimes healing doesn't start with medicine. Sometimes it starts with a conversation. And in the next part, we'll talk about something even more subtle, a shift in outlook, where life once full of hope now feels flat, grey, and empty. A quiet loss of joy that can be easy to miss until we finally pay attention. There's something deeply human about looking forward to the little things. For some, it might be a morning walk in the garden, the warmth of a cup of tea, or watching birds gather at the window. For others, it's playing with grandchildren, calling an old friend, or baking a favourite family recipe. These small joys become the colours of our days, but when depression begins to quietly settle into the heart of an older adult, those colours begin to fade. The joy that once danced in their eyes dulls into indifference. That weekly bingo night that used to bring laughter. Now it feels like a chore, the anticipation of holidays or family visits, replaced by a blank, emotionless nod. This isn't just getting older, it's not just being tired, it's a slow emotional shutdown, a loss of interest in things that used to matter, a hollow feeling where excitement used to live. And sadly, it often goes unnoticed. Why? Because many people assume that losing interest is a normal part of aging. Maybe they're just slowing down, we say, or it's natural to not be as excited about things anymore. But there's a difference between slowing down and shutting down. Joy doesn't retire with age. Hope doesn't vanish just because the years have passed. And laughter? It's not meant to be silenced by time. This emotional flatness is often a major symptom of depression in seniors, and one of the most heartbreaking. It's the kind that makes life feel grey, even on the brightest days. It's the kind that whispers, "Why bother?" when invited to do something they once loved. But here's the beauty. Joy can return, slowly, gently, with care, connection, and support. It's never too late for someone to feel alive again. Sometimes it begins with something as simple as this. I miss seeing you smile. Let's take a short walk together. In the next part, we'll explore the emotional distance that often follows, how depression builds walls around the heart, leading our elders to retreat, isolate, and disappear into the background, even when they're still right there in the room. You might see them every day, sitting quietly by the window, eating their meals, maybe even smiling faintly at your jokes. But deep inside, they're drifting. Not physically, not in memory, but emotionally, they're pulling away. One of the most misunderstood signs of depression in older adults is emotional withdrawal. They begin to retreat from conversations, become unusually quiet and avoid eye contact. They no longer initiate hugs, ask about your day, or share how they feel. It's like they've started to fade, not from life, but from connection. At first, it might seem like they're just tired, or maybe they're trying not to be a burden. But what's actually happening is more serious. Depression whispers lies. You're not needed anymore. No one would notice if you were gone. And with time, those lies become louder than the voice of hope. So they retreat. They cancel social plans. They let the phone ring without answering. They spend more time alone, saying things like, "I'm fine by myself." But here's what makes this especially dangerous. Emotional withdrawal doesn't often trigger alarm bells. To outsiders, it looks like peace, like someone who enjoys solitude. But inside, it can be deep sorrow in disguise. They want to be reached. They want to feel seen, even when they act like they don't. And often, they're silently begging for someone to notice. Sometimes all it takes is persistence, gentle persistence. Sitting beside them without asking for anything, inviting them for a short walk, holding their hand without needing a response. Being there again and again until the silence begins to crack. Because depression isolates, but love pursues. In the next part, we'll explore a sign even more alarming, one that's harder to talk about but too important to ignore. When thoughts of death begin to feel like an escape for them. We have to talk about this, for their sake, and for the sake of every life that still holds meaning, even when it feels empty. There's a chilling silence that sometimes settles in the hearts of the elderly. A quiet longing, not for peace in life, but for peace beyond it. It may start with subtle phrases, "I've lived long enough." Maybe it's time I joined my friends. There's nothing left for me here. At first, these words might sound poetic, as if they're reflecting on life's journey, embracing the natural cycle of aging. But look deeper, listen closer, because sometimes behind those words there's more than reflection, there's resignation. When an elderly person begins to view death not with fear, but with relief, it's time to pay attention. This is one of the most critical, yet hidden signs of depression in older adults. It's not always about direct statements like, "I want to die." No, depression in this stage is more nuanced. It wraps itself in gentle tones, quiet sighs, and dreams of letting go. It masquerades as wisdom, when in truth, it's surrender. They may begin to give away cherished belongings. They might stop taking medications or cancel appointments, saying things like, "What's the point?" To them, life feels like a waiting room, and they're tired of waiting. This emotional state is especially dangerous because it's often misunderstood by loved ones. We say they're just old. We assume they're just preparing for the inevitable. But here's the truth. Not every thought of death is a natural part of aging. Sometimes it's a cry for help, a whisper that they've lost their sense of worth, that joy has packed its bags, that the world no longer holds a seat for them, and yet, even now, the flame hasn't fully gone out. Even now, with the right care, the right presence, the right words, they can remember what it feels like to want to live again. How? By reminding them of purpose, by reconnecting them with meaning, by showing them that their presence still lights up someone's world, because purpose doesn't retire, and neither does love. In the next part, we'll explore how a seemingly unrelated symptom, physical aches and chronic pain, can be deeply connected to untreated emotional wounds. Pain speaks, but not always in words. Let's keep going. Not all suffering screams. Sometimes it aches. And for many older adults, the loudest cries for help come not from the heart, but from the body. Imagine waking up every morning with no energy. Your back feels like it's been carrying a lifetime of burdens. Your joints protest every step. There's a dull throb in your head that no medicine seems to ease. Doctors run tests. Results come back normal. But something isn't right. This is where emotional pain puts on a disguise. Depression in older adults often doesn't appear the way we expect. It hides behind physical complaints, headaches, backaches, stomach issues, chest tightness, fatigue. Not because they're faking it, but because the mind and body are deeply connected. When the soul suffers, the body often carries the weight. They go from doctor to doctor, painkillers, sleep aids, anti-inflammatory pills, but rarely does anyone stop and ask, "How's your heart feeling?" This is how depression becomes a ghost in the medical system. It haunts the body, but leaves no trace in scans. It fills the pill box, but empties the spirit. Even more heartbreaking, many older adults were raised in a time when mental health wasn't spoken of. Emotions were buried, not expressed. They were taught to be strong, to push through, to keep silent. So instead of saying, "I feel lost," they say, "My knees hurt." Instead of saying, "I'm scared," they say, "I can't sleep." And sadly, the world listens to the symptoms, but not the story underneath. But here's the truth we must remember. Persistent, unexplained pain can be the body's way of expressing emotional suffering. And the sooner we recognize this, the sooner we can offer real healing. Not just pills, but presence. Not just treatment, but understanding. So if your loved one keeps saying, "I just don't feel well," don't brush it off. Don't assume it's just aging. Sit with them. Gently ask, "What's been heavy on your heart lately?" That one question can begin to turn pain into healing. In the next part, we'll talk about something just as vital, how isolation isn't always chosen, and how loneliness, real, deep loneliness, can slowly chip away at the will to live. There is a kind of silence that doesn't bring peace. It brings pain. Imagine sitting in a living room filled with memories, but no voices, no footsteps, no calls. The television plays, but you're not watching. Outside, the world moves on. Inside, time feels frozen. This is not rest. This is not solitude. This is loneliness. For many older adults, loneliness isn't just a feeling, it's a daily reality. Friends have passed, children live far away, routines have changed, the phone doesn't ring like it used to, and little by little, the silence grows louder than any noise. Loneliness isn't always about being alone. It's about feeling unseen, unheard, unneeded. And here's the heartbreaking truth. Prolonged loneliness has been linked to depression, cognitive decline, and even early mortality. It's been called as dangerous to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Yet people rarely talk about it. When asked, they might say, "I'm fine," but their eyes say otherwise. The smile may still be there, but it doesn't reach the soul. The laughter, if any, is faint and fading. Even when surrounded by people, they might feel like they don't belong, like the world has moved on without them. And the more they feel forgotten, the more they retreat. They stop reaching out. They stop attending events. They decline invitations, not because they want to, but because they've convinced themselves they're no longer wanted. They become ghosts in their own homes, shadows of who they once were. But here's what we must remember. Every human being, no matter their age, needs connection, a hand to hold, a voice to hear, a heart to listen. It could be a weekly phone call, a surprise visit, a walk in the park, a video call, a handwritten letter. These small gestures might seem simple to us, but to someone battling loneliness, they're life rafts. Because sometimes what heals the soul isn't medication. It's meaningful connection. So if you have an elder in your life who's gone quiet, and don't wait, reach out, remind them you still matter. And if you're the one feeling this silence in your chest, please know you are not forgotten. You are not alone. Help, love and warmth are still within reach. Always. Next, we'll explore something rarely talked about: why older adults often hide their depression behind a lifetime of strength, and how we can learn to see through the mask with compassion. There's a certain kind of strength that comes with age. It's the strength of surviving wars, literal or emotional, of raising families, of enduring loss, hardship, sacrifice. It's a strength forged through years of showing up. No matter how broken you feel inside, that strength becomes armor. And for many older adults, it becomes a mask. They've learned, often from a young age, that emotions are best kept private. That talking about sadness, fear, or mental struggle is a sign of weakness. That you keep your chin up, carry on, and don't burden others with your pain. So when depression creeps in, they hide it. They smile through the tears. They say, "I'm okay." They cook, clean, and laugh on cue while quietly falling apart. This is one of the most overlooked realities in mental health among the elderly. Their generation was taught to endure, to be grateful no matter what, to survive, not complain. And so the symptoms are brushed aside. They may say, "It's just part of getting old. I'm just tired lately. There's no use in talking about it." But inside, they're aching. Not just from age, but from carrying pain in silence. Their minds may feel cloudy. Their days may blur together. Joy may feel like a distant memory, but they won't tell you that, because they don't want to be a burden, because they believe they have to be strong for you. This is why we must listen with more than our ears. We must observe what isn't being said. We must notice the shifts, the quiet withdrawal, the subtle sighs, the growing disinterest in things they once loved. Because behind the strong front, there might be someone longing to be seen. Someone who needs permission to not be okay. Someone who, after decades of being the caregiver, the supporter, the strong one, needs someone to simply say, "It's all right to feel what you feel. I'm here for you." Sometimes the best support isn't advice, it's presence, it's patience. It's creating a safe space where they can finally take the mask off and breathe, because strength isn't always about holding it together. Sometimes true strength is allowing yourself to be human. Next, we'll look at the crucial role of faith and spirituality in emotional healing during old age, especially for those who feel they've lost their sense of purpose. There comes a point in life, often in the later years, where the noise quiets down. The responsibilities that once filled every minute fade. The children grow, the career ends. The home that once echoed with laughter may now feel too quiet, too still. And in that silence, many begin to ask, what now? What am I here for? Does my life still have meaning? This sense of emptiness isn't just a feeling. It can be a deeply spiritual pain, a longing for connection, direction, and significance that goes beyond the physical or mental. And when it's unmet, it can lead to a form of depression that's hard to name but easy to feel, a quiet ache in the soul. But in this very place, this space of searching, many find a surprising lifeline, faith. Not necessarily religion in a rigid form, but the deeper sense of belief. Belief that life still holds purpose, that their existence still matters, that even in the stillness they are seen, loved, and held. For some, this rediscovery happens in prayer or meditation. For others, in reading sacred texts or spending time in nature. For many, it blooms through small moments, like helping a neighbour, listening to a grandchild's story, or simply watching the sunrise with gratitude. Faith can remind us that our worth is not measured by productivity, that slowing down isn't the end, it's an invitation to reflect, to connect, to forgive, to heal, to find peace not in doing but in simply being. And yet faith alone may not be enough. We are spiritual, but we are also deeply social beings. Connection with people, with community, with meaningful conversations can reawaken a sense of joy and belonging. Even a weekly visit, a shared cup of tea, or a group that meets to talk about life and faith can create a lifeline for someone who feels forgotten. One of the most powerful ways to uplift an elder's spirit is to remind them, you still matter. You are still needed. Your wisdom, your presence, your story, it's a gift. Even when they feel invisible, unimportant, or ashamed of their emotional struggles, remind them that their life still holds light, that faith, whether religious or deeply personal, can be a candle in the darkest night. Because sometimes what the soul needs most isn't a cure, it's connection. Not a solution, but a reason to hope again. Let's now explore a surprising sign of depression in older adults, one that looks like strength on the surface, but often hides deep emotional distress. We often assume that depression always looks like sadness. We imagine tears, loneliness, or someone who withdraws completely from life. But among older adults, depression can wear a very different mask, one that looks surprisingly like strength. It's the grandmother who always says, "I'm fine," even when she's not. The grandfather who cracks jokes, but hasn't felt joy in years. The elder who never complains, who keeps everything together, yet inside feels like they're falling apart. This is what some psychologists call smiling depression, and it's far more common than we think, especially among seniors who were raised to be strong, to endure, to never burden others with their problems. They grew up in times of war, loss, sacrifice. They were taught that emotions were private and vulnerability was weakness. So, instead of reaching out, they learn to smile through the pain, to pretend everything's okay until it's not. Behind that smile may lie exhaustion. Behind the "I'm okay" may be chronic hopelessness. Behind the daily routine may be a deep desire to give up, but they don't know how to say it. This makes detecting depression in older adults incredibly difficult. Caregivers and family may miss it completely, until the signs become too loud to ignore. A sudden illness, a drop in appetite, an accidental fall that may not be so accidental, or a quiet statement like, "I don't think I'm needed anymore." It's heartbreaking, but it's real. So how do we help? By listening beyond the words, by noticing the energy behind their smile, by creating space where they can actually be honest, without feeling judged or shamed. Ask gentle, open questions. How have you been sleeping lately? What's been on your mind these days? Is there anything you wish someone would ask you? Sometimes all it takes is one conversation, one safe moment to break the silence. But we must also understand depression doesn't erase a person's strength. If anything, those who hide it may be some of the strongest, fighting invisible battles every single day. What they need isn't to be rescued. They need to be seen, heard, held with compassion. Because behind that smile, there is a storm. And with the right support, even that storm can pass. In the next section, we'll explore how physical pain and chronic illness can quietly fuel depression in older adults, and how the body and mind are more deeply connected than we often realize. Sometimes, a quiet kind of sadness settles in, not the dramatic kind that demands attention, but the slow, creeping fog that makes everything feel just a bit heavier. This emotional weight can show up in small ways, hesitating before getting out of bed, avoiding social gatherings, or simply losing interest in things that used to bring joy. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of depression in older adults is how invisible it can be. Society often mistakes these signs for just getting older, but that's a dangerous assumption. Aging does bring change, both physical and emotional, but that doesn't mean we should normalize prolonged sadness, hopelessness, or emptiness. And it's not always just emotional. Depression in older adults can manifest physically. Unexplained aches and pains, digestive problems, fatigue that no amount of sleep can seem to fix. These are not always signs of aging. They might be the body's way of crying out for emotional attention. This is where families play a critical role. Listening, observing, gently engaging. It doesn't always take grand gestures. Sometimes it's the consistent presence, the regular phone call, the shared meal, the quiet walk. Sometimes it's just sitting together in silence, offering your presence as proof that someone still cares. The way older adults talk can also change when they are depressed. They may become more negative, more cynical, or express feelings of worthlessness. They might say things like, "What's the point?" or "I'm just a burden." These aren't just phrases to be brushed aside. They're windows into the heart of someone who may be suffering in silence. As caregivers, as children, as friends, we have to train ourselves to hear the message behind the words. Depression often doesn't scream. It whispers, and only those who listen closely will hear it. Sometimes older adults don't want to talk about their emotional state, maybe because they grew up in a generation where mental health was rarely discussed. Maybe they don't want to appear weak, or maybe they themselves don't fully understand what's happening inside of them. So instead of asking directly, "Are you depressed?" we can ask, "How have you been sleeping lately?" Or, "Have you been enjoying your favorite shows lately?" Or, "Is there anything you've been feeling too tired to do?" Gentle, specific questions can open doors that direct ones might close. We also need to be patient. Healing is not linear, and understanding doesn't always come right away. But when someone feels seen and heard, truly heard, it can make all the difference. This journey isn't just about spotting signs of depression. It's about building a world where older adults feel valuable, respected, and loved. A world where they know they still matter. A world where their stories still have space and their voices are still wanted. Because at the end of the day, the elderly aren't looking for pity. They're looking for connection, purpose, meaning, and love. And often the most powerful thing you can do is simply to be there, to choose presence over perfection, to listen more than you speak, and to make sure they never walk through the shadows alone. There's something deeply human about the need to feel useful, and for older adults, that need doesn't fade. It may even become stronger. Many of them spent their whole lives contributing, building, nurturing, supporting. Then suddenly they find themselves retired, their children grown, their routines changed, their sense of purpose quietly slipping through their fingers. Depression often finds fertile ground in this space between identity and transition, when someone who once held responsibility for others suddenly feels like they're the ones being managed. It can create a silent grief, a mourning of their former selves. This is why purpose matters. It doesn't have to be grand. It could be a plant that needs watering every morning, a grandchild who calls every weekend, a book that they're writing one page at a time. Purpose isn't measured by scale. It's measured by meaning. And sometimes that meaning needs to be rediscovered. Not forced, not rushed, but gently uncovered, like a seed buried in the winter soil, waiting for spring. Families can help foster this by including older adults in decision-making, asking their opinions, inviting their stories, letting them teach, letting them feel that their experience still carries weight. Because it does. Community also plays a vital role here. Too often, our modern society isolates the elderly. But humans were never meant to age in solitude. In traditional cultures, elders were revered, their presence considered a blessing. Wisdom was sought, not dismissed. We need to bring that back, not out of nostalgia, but out of necessity. Social connection is one of the most powerful antidotes to depression. A lunch with a neighbour, a walk in the park, a shared prayer, a game night, a conversation. These simple things act like sunlight to the soul. And if you're an older adult listening to this, please know it's not too late to rebuild joy. Not too late to reconnect. Not too late to rediscover yourself. You are still here for a reason. Your existence is not an accident. There are still chapters waiting to be written in your story. And maybe, just maybe, the most meaningful ones are still ahead. So if you find yourself in a dark season, reach out, speak up, let someone know. Depression thrives in silence, but it weakens in the presence of love. You don't have to fight this alone. It's important to talk about how the body and mind are deeply connected. In older adults, physical health challenges often intertwine with emotional struggles. When the body starts to slow down, when pain becomes more frequent, when sleep becomes elusive, when energy feels like a distant memory, it can lead to feelings of helplessness and sadness. And sometimes, that sadness lingers longer than it should. But here's the thing many people don't realize. Depression can sometimes look like physical illness. It can disguise itself as fatigue, poor appetite, or vague body aches. That's why it's often missed, even by doctors. A person may visit multiple clinics, complaining of physical symptoms, but beneath it all, it's emotional pain trying to speak. We must listen differently. Family members and caregivers should pay close attention when an elderly loved one begins withdrawing from activities they used to enjoy, when they stop wanting to go out, when they say, "I'm just tired" a little too often, when their spark starts to fade. These are not just signs of aging, they could be signs of silent suffering. And silence is dangerous. Silence creates distance. Silence tells someone your pain isn't worth mentioning. But the truth is, every emotion in the heart of an elderly person is still sacred, still valid, still human. Let's break that silence. Encourage honest conversations. Not just the polite surface-level talks, but the kind where feelings are named and held without judgment. Where someone can say, "I feel lost lately," and the response is, "I'm here. Tell me more." And let's remember that depression is not a weakness. It's not a sign of failure. It's not something that only happens to people who aren't strong enough. It is, in fact, something that happens because someone has been strong for too long, without rest, without support, without space to be vulnerable. Imagine an elderly woman named Martha. She used to love tending her garden every morning. Roses, sunflowers, daisies, all brought her joy. But lately, the flowers have wilted, and so has her enthusiasm. She tells her daughter she's just too tired, that her knees ache more than usual. But her daughter senses something more. Martha doesn't talk much anymore. She barely smiles. Her favourite shows don't interest her. Meals are skipped, and the mornings are no longer greeted with gratitude, but with a sigh. This is how depression whispers, quietly, slowly, and this is where compassion must speak louder. We must not dismiss these changes as just part of getting old. The human spirit doesn't lose its need for joy just because the body ages. If anything, it needs joy more because time feels shorter and the past feels heavier. Depression in older adults is not rare, but it is rarely addressed. So what can be done? First, observation. Be present in the lives of the elderly around you. Notice their habits, their moods, their social behaviour. If something feels off for more than a few weeks, it's worth addressing. Second, create safe spaces. The elderly grew up in times where mental health was rarely discussed. Some may carry stigma, shame, or guilt for simply feeling low. It's up to us to assure them that seeking help is not a flaw, it's an act of strength. Third, involve professionals. Geriatric mental health experts are trained to understand the nuances of emotional pain in older adults. Therapy can help unearth the deep-rooted emotions they may have buried for years. Medication, when prescribed carefully, can also provide relief. And fourth, community. We all need people. The warmth of companionship, the simplicity of conversation, the laughter from shared stories. Loneliness is fertile ground for depression. But community can be medicine. Community is knowing there's someone to call, someone to sit beside you, even in silence, someone who says, "I see you." And that can change everything, because at the end of the day, what every person truly wants, regardless of age, is to feel that they matter, that their existence still brings light into the world, that they are not forgotten. So remind them, with your time, your presence, your words, remind them that they are loved, that their life still holds meaning, that it's never too late to heal. You might be wondering, why is it that so many signs of depression go unnoticed in older adults? Because often they themselves don't recognize it. They say, "I'm just tired," or "I've lived long enough," or "It's just part of aging." They've lived through wars, losses, financial hardship, perhaps the passing of loved ones. In their eyes, this sadness feels like an old friend who never really left, just changed shape. But sadness is not supposed to become permanent, and age does not mean a person has to give up on emotional well-being. Let's talk about sleep. Sleep disturbances are very common in older adults, but when someone starts waking up too early, sleeping too much, or experiencing chronic insomnia, it can be more than just a biological change. It could be a signal from the mind asking for help. Let's talk about eating. Many seniors lose their appetite, blaming medication or digestion, but depression often manifests through loss of interest in food. Food, after all, is not just fuel, it's an emotional experience. When someone stops enjoying their favourite meals, something deeper may be going on, and then there's the silence. Sometimes the elderly just become quiet, withdrawn. They may stop calling their family, stop attending community events, stop doing the crossword puzzle they used to love. That quiet is not peace, it's absence. An absence of desire, an absence of connection. They may even begin to express thoughts that subtly reflect hopelessness. There's no point. Nobody needs me anymore. I'm just a burden. These are not passing comments. These are cries for help. Do not ignore them. The biggest mistake we can make is assuming that this is just a part of getting old, that this emotional withdrawal is natural. It is not. The soul never stops craving connection, purpose, and love, and it is never too late to give it. Some of the most powerful healing can happen late in life, because finally the noise of ambition and comparison is gone. All that remains is the heart and its unspoken stories. Let the elderly speak. Let them cry. Let them be heard. Let them grieve the things they lost and celebrate the things they still have. Because depression isn't always about sadness. Sometimes it's about numbness, a heavy kind of emptiness that sits quietly in the background of daily life, convincing someone that there is no reason to try, but there is always a reason. And sometimes that reason is you. A single kind conversation, a patient moment of listening, a reminder that they're not invisible, that their story still matters, that the world is better because they are in it. And when we do that, when we offer our presence, our patience, and our love, we plant a seed of hope, a seed that tells them, even in the winter of life, flowers can still bloom. In the quiet of a late afternoon, a grandmother sits by her window, sipping a warm cup of tea, gazing at the golden hue of the sun setting behind the trees. To the world, she seems peaceful, but inside there's a silent storm, a weight pressing down on her chest, a heaviness in her heart that she can't quite explain. She brushes it off as just getting older. But what if it's something more? As we dive deeper into the nuances of depression in older adults, we must acknowledge how complex and layered it truly is. Aging brings a unique set of emotional challenges. There's the loss of friends and loved ones, the shift in daily roles and identities, and the growing awareness of one's own mortality. For many, the rhythm of life slows down, but the mind doesn't always find peace in that stillness. Instead, it starts to echo with regrets, with what-ifs, and with a longing for days that felt fuller, brighter. Loneliness, for instance, isn't just about being alone, it's about feeling unseen, unheard. And in older age, that feeling can become all too familiar. Children grow up, friends move or pass away, and the once busy household becomes silent. It's in this silence that depression often slips in unnoticed. Sleep changes are also a frequent visitor in later life. But when someone wakes up feeling more exhausted than when they went to bed, or finds themselves dreading the day ahead with no clear reason, it's not just poor sleep. It could be a sign of something deeper. The body might be resting, but the soul is not. One of the most overlooked signs is a diminishing interest in hobbies or activities that once brought joy. A man who once spent hours tending to his garden might now let the weeds take over. A woman who used to love baking might not step into the kitchen for weeks. It's not laziness or fatigue. It's emotional numbness. When the heart is heavy, even the sweetest things lose their flavour. Another telltale sign is irritability or unusual anger. We often associate depression with sadness, but in many seniors it manifests as short temper, frustration or agitation. This can lead to misunderstandings. Family members may see them as moody or difficult, when in reality it's a cry for help wrapped in anger. And then there's the guilt. Not always expressed, but deeply felt. A sense of being a burden, of not contributing, of feeling useless. Society often praises youth and productivity, and when those fade, many elders internalize the belief that their value has diminished too. But nothing could be further from the truth. Their wisdom, their presence, their stories, they are priceless. And it's this message that must echo louder than the silence of depression. Recognizing these signs isn't just about offering medical help, it's about restoring dignity. It's about saying, I see you, you matter. It's about inviting our elders back into the fold of connection, purpose and meaning. Caregivers, children, friends, your role is powerful. A regular call, a shared meal, an invitation to take a walk. These simple gestures can rekindle light in someone who's been walking in emotional darkness. And for older adults who might be feeling this way, know that you are not alone. These feelings do not define you. They are not your fault. And most importantly, they can be eased with the right support, love, and care. So let this be our reminder. Every day is a new chance to notice, to care, and to connect. Stay with me, because in the final part, we'll talk about the healing path forward, the things we can do, the help that is available, and the hope that still shines even after the darkest days. And now, as we come to the end of this journey, I want to leave you with something more than just information. I want to leave you with heart, with truth, with hope. If you are an older adult listening to this, I want you to know your feelings are valid, your pain is real, but so is your worth, so is your strength. You have walked through decades of life, of storms and sunshine alike. You carry within you a lifetime of stories, of wisdom, of moments that shaped you, and you still have more to give, more to see, more to feel. Depression does not define your ending. It is not a full stop. It is a comma, a pause in your story. And with the right support, it can be followed by healing, by connection, by joy. Please do not keep your silence. Talk to someone. Reach out to a friend, a loved one, or a professional. There is no shame in needing help. In fact, asking for it is one of the most courageous things you can do. And if you are someone who loves an older adult, take the time to truly see them. Ask the real questions. Don't just settle for "I'm fine." Dig deeper, spend time, share space. Listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Your presence could be the very lifeline someone is silently hoping for. This world often glorifies speed, productivity, and youth, but perhaps the greatest beauty lies in slowing down, in being present, in honouring the quiet strength of those who've come before us. We owe our elders more than just care. We owe them dignity, love, and the reminder that they are still deeply needed. Grace Health exists not just to inform, but to connect, to remind each and every one of us that health isn't just about the body, it's about the soul, about purpose, about love, about knowing that no matter your age, you matter. So let today be a turning point. Let today be the day we stop ignoring the signs. Let today be the day we extend a hand, open a heart, and bring someone out of the shadows, because no one deserves to face depression alone. And most importantly, because healing is always possible and love never grows old. Thank you for listening. Stay strong, stay connected, stay hopeful. This is Grace Health, reminding you every age has its grace, and every soul its light. Treatment is available. Counseling, therapy, medications when necessary. These are not signs of defeat, but tools of healing. And healing is always possible, even in the later chapters of life. Even when it feels like too much time has passed, even when you've carried pain for decades, the heart is still capable of light. And sometimes it just needs a hand to gently pull back the curtain.